Campus to Canton. Campus to Canton on the Better Sports Network.
College football is off and running early today. I think the early slate, the 12 o'clock slate, might be the best slate of the afternoon. This is the Tailgate, the Campus2Canton crew joining you. It is the college pregame show, and unlike anything that you will find out there, we got a full house today. Chris Moxley, Colin Decker, Nicholas Ian Allen, Alfred Fernandez. Guys, Red River Shootout. Red River Shootout at 12 o'clock today. Ohio State plays at 12 o'clock today. But before we get really into any of that, I want to talk about Tez Walker. The NCAA, finally, they get some news, some new information from the university, and they're allowing Tez to suit up today. Tez Walker, for those who don't know, a transfer from Kent State, played for Sean Lewis last year, a 6'4", 205-ish pound speed guy who can get behind the defense. I have comped him to Christian Watson, the Packers wide receiver. Same length, same deep threat ability. That's what we're seeing. That's right, Jay. Good morning to Tez Walker. Chris Moxley, what are your thoughts just about Tez being declared eligible to play in as early as today?
I think it's interesting because I think the UNC Attorney General basically threatened the NCAA and said, this is a serious antitrust issue, and if you're going to proceed with this, we're going to take you to court. And the NCAA said, okay, we don't want to go to court over this because we will lose, as they have consistently lost over the past 3 to 5 years in court. So I'm happy for Tez Walker. I think all these dudes with these situations should be playing. His situation was so unique that it was so obvious to like the normal person that he should play. NCAA is losing all their power, so they were just flexing a little bit to keep him on the sidelines. But I'm glad he's playing. He should have been playing week 1. Drake May gets a huge boost to this offense. He's been carrying this offense by himself. Now he is a bona fide, what I think could be a wide receiver 1.
I agree with you. Nick, I want to come to you to ask about how Tez Walker, his implementation in the offense may change projections. Before I do that, Colin, for those who haven't watched Tez Walker play, who aren't dialed into college football, where do you have Tez Walker amongst your wide receiver rankings, and did that ranking change with him being declared eligible?
Yeah, it absolutely changed with him being eligible. I mean, preseason, he was a top 20 wide receiver for me, and that's all classes combined. He probably would have been fringe top 5 for the 2024 class for me. But obviously, without him being on the field, they had to drop him significantly. I want to see him shake off the rust a little bit here. I want to see that connection that he has with Drake May and how that shapes out before I vault him back up to borderline top 5 wide receiver in the 2024 class, but he is definitely making his way back up there.
I mean, I have him as a top 15 wide receiver overall, and I really didn't – even if he would have just declared for the NFL draft after the season without playing, I think I still would have had him top 15. Alfred, any strong feelings on Tez Walker being declared eligible to play and is going to be on the field, should be on the field today?
I would love to see him on the field today. I think, if he comes out gangbusters right away, even if it takes him a few games, but certainly if he comes out and looks like the best receiver in that room where there's plenty of room for someone to be good because they haven't been great, right? And like you said, Drake May carrying the team. But if he comes out and asserts himself quickly, like game 1, I just think, his NFL stock, everything for Tez Walker just goes through the roof almost immediately. We were waiting to see, can he hack it at P5? Can he hack it in the big show? And he's got a quarterback that can get him the ball. So really, he's set up perfectly, which is, I think, what we all thought preseason. And I'd just love to see that pop off right away. And I think he becomes a Devy asset. Yeah.
Nick, we're all talking about Tez from a subjective perspective and the impact that we expect him to have on the field. But from a numbers perspective, what does his declaration of eligibility have on your projections?
Quite honestly, from a numbers standpoint, the impact is somewhat minimal right now. Probably can't fully capture the sort of boost that it might give to North Carolina, because partly, the way I do things, it weighs most if a player is considered a starter, because I'm a little unclear as to how much Tez Walker has practiced in the last few weeks. I decided to slot him in as part of the 2 deep, but not in that top 3 starting group. And if I had just gone ahead and put him in as a starter, expect that he's going to play as much as we expected he would have immediately, when he transferred in, the impact might have been, at a point to my projections. Wide receiver just doesn't make that big of an impact, especially when, though Tez Walker is the highest rated wide receiver in our VGR individual player ratings from CFP Winning Edge, C2C Winning Edge tier, the gap between him and guys like Nate McCullum or JJ Jones or Kobe Paysour is not big enough that we're going to see, multiple points on a projected point spread for a game. So North Carolina is a favorite today, double-digit favorite in our projections over Syracuse. That number inched up just a little bit, closer to 11 now than 10.5, but the overall impact is mostly minimal this week. We might see a little bit more next week, assuming that he will then become a full-time starter relatively quickly.
If you want to look at the numbers that Nick is looking at, projected spreads, depth charts, projected rankings, all of that information is available at Campus2Canton.com. Just click on the CF or the C2C Winning Edge tier. We're getting breaking news here this morning. TreVeyon Henderson out versus Maryland today, so fire up Trip Tranium, maybe fire up Mayan Williams, maybe. Mayan Williams kind of taking a backseat to Trip Tranium as the number 2 running back there. So TreVeyon Henderson is out. As a matter of fact, I had taken TreVeyon Henderson out of my lineup for the aforementioned Tez Walker. So watch out for Tez this afternoon. All right, we had a few games here the last couple of days. College football started on Wednesday this week. So, if you're a college football fan, you're going to take it all in, especially for the next 40 days or so. Chris Moxley, Heinrich Harburg for Nebraska gets the start over Jeff Sims. How did he look to you? I see 18 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown. Wasn't great as a passer, but Nebraska gets the win 20-7 over Illinois.
Yeah, they don't want him to throw the ball. If they're like a borderline service academy at this point with just wanting to run the ball as much as they can, and it worked. That was a big win for them. They were underdogs heading into that game. I think it kind of solidified that Illinois has real problems. We knew that they were, in the secondary, they'd lost 3 NFL day 2 and day 1 players. The offensive line, which has, I think, at least 2 NFL players and possibly first rounders, just not getting pushed. Illinois is down really bad right now, and Nebraska kind of just took it to them. Harburg is nothing special, but he's better than Jeff Sims, as in he doesn't turn the ball over every other play.
I don't know if on the Illinois side. Well, first of all, on the Nebraska side, I should mention that Malachi Coleman recorded his first reception of the year, just 1 catch for 5 yards yesterday. If you're not Malachi Coleman, one of the more athletic prospects in this wide receiver class, could have played defensive end, was a great edge rusher in high school. Even if you go read his 24/7 profile, they were projecting him as a defensive end who needed to gain a little bit more weight, but an excellent athlete. Let's see if he can break some of those year 1-0 thresholds. An article, if you need more information on the year 1-0 theory, Austin Nace wrote an article. It's available at Campus2Canton.com this week. Go ahead and find that. On the Illinois side, Alfred, I want to come to you because I want to talk a little bit about Caden Fegan. Caden Fegan, and I have a strong take on him from a recruiting perspective. I don't know if we had Josh McCray was injured yesterday, so Caden Fegan got some more carries, but the running game was not working for Illinois. 5 carries, but did lead the team in. Did he lead? I think he led the team.
Yeah, it was like 5-15 led the
15.
team.
Yeah, but any strong takes on this true freshman running back who was the player of the year in the state of Illinois last year.
Well, the strong take is utter disappointment. Really was looking forward to him getting some run. He had broken out a little bit in the game before, I think during some where the game was kind of in hand one way or the other, or the week before, I can't remember. Looked okay, had a nice long run. There was some rumblings, hey, you're going to get a big dose of Caden Fagan. Even before that Josh McCray injury, he was like climbing the depth chart and was like, this is it, go time, and it's Nebraska, which defense I think is okay. But anyway, it was just a disaster. It was disgusting. 5 carries, 15 yards. He caught like 2 or 3 passes for another 12, I think it was. But like, this guy's very interesting from a recruiting standpoint. We liked him last year. Big dude, 220, 230 pounds, kind of played a wildcat offense in high school where he was a little bit of a quarterback, a little bit of a running back. But we thought he was athletic. We thought he looked spry for his size. I think he hit 21 miles an hour, I want to say, on the ground, which is pretty good at that size. And, was kind of an under-the-radar guy going to a team that wants to run the ball. We thought this was a guy who you could really think about, and then it was going to get a starting job right away. Everything looked golden, and wow, what an absolute goose egg. I mean, I'm shocked. I'm shocked with that.
The running game overall wasn't great.
No.
He did lead the team and he did technically lead the team in rushing. He also added 3 receptions. This is a player, just like Alfred said, he played multiple positions and was never a primary running back in high school. So he has some hardening to do. We know that Brett Bielema likes to run that Wisconsin-style system down Wisconsin South there in Illinois. He's going to get better, but he has to get tougher. He has to run a little bit tougher to his size. We're talking about – that's one thing we didn't say. 6'2", 6'3", 240 pounds. So he's
listed on the site. I just checked 250. I mean, he's
250 now. A huge guy, but did not.
Felix is sweating right now.
I do. I mean, I like him.
His name.
I like him. Nicholas Ian Allen. We don't expect to see Josh McCray the rest of the season.
Yeah, that's correct. After the game last night, Brett Bielema met with the media, passed along that McCray suffered a significant injury that is going to keep him out for 3 months. So he is out for the rest of the season. Reggie Love, who was the starter last night for Illinois, was not 100%. You could tell. There were some reports early in pregame that he was moving around, but didn't look 100%. And he re-aggravated that ankle injury at least twice, it looked like, including one that was pretty nasty toward the end that he did not return. So it looks like things are sort of clearing a little bit potentially for Fagan to really become that top running back, at least I would expect next week, because that Love injury didn't look good. But then we'll get some more news, I'm sure, later to see whether or not Fagan could potentially turn into kind of the bell cow type back that he has the potential to be as early as next week.
Go ahead and like this straight season-ending injury for Josh McCray too. I mean, he's
could just be one of those guys that just
And we had hope for Josh McCray, who performed well as a freshman. Go ahead and like this video. If you flipped open your Campus to Canton freshman supplemental guide and read Caden Fegan's draft profile there in the magazine, like this video anyway and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's move on here. Oh, I do want to say one more thing about Isaiah Williams. I think we all are in agreement. One, Isaiah Williams, the wide receiver there for Illinois. He's a good player on a team that can't really feature him. He's probably going to have a better NFL career than he has had college career, because at the very least, he's going to make it in the NFL as a return man. That's going to get him on the field, but he has excellent after the catch ability. I think he's going to have a better NFL career there. So let's move on here to Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Colin, I don't think that there was another player who was more criticized by his head coach this offseason than Ollie Gordon and Mike Gundy, really chastising him the whole offseason. He finally had a breakout game here yesterday.
Yeah, he did. And like you said, Gundy was chastising him all offseason, calling him like different variations of soft, which which maybe that's a motivation tactic. I don't know, but it seemed to work, at least in this one. He had a huge game. He had that breakout game now, 20 carries, over 150 yards. He had the touchdown. He was a guy that we liked coming into the season. Was listed preseason at 211, and I think that's the big concern that I have with Ollie Gordon is I don't really believe that 211 mark. If you watch him, he's a little slight of frame. So I thought there was maybe some credence to that, running soft thing. So I did drop Gordon down my rankings here, but after a game like this against a tough Kansas State defense, I think he's somebody you have to put back on the radar.
And we know that Mike Gundy likes to have his number one running back. So, I mean, fire up Ollie Gordon moving forward. Jaden Bray played well in this one. Brennan Presley. Free Brennan Presley from Bixby, Oklahoma. Shout out to Bixby there. Let's move on here to anything. I don't know if there's anything else to say about that Kansas State, Oklahoma State game, but there is a lot to say about Western Kentucky and Louisiana Tech. Nick, I think I want to – Nick, we're in League of Record together, and he's already smiling because he knows where I'm going here. Nicholas Ian Allen made the draft. Not fun because he went heavy CFF straight from the beginning. He has the Malachi Corley and Austin Reed stack. You have to feel good about starting those two this week.
Well, as we'll talk about in plenty of future segments, I'm sure this week is pretty hellish as far as the number of players who are off this week. So it more even than usual. This is a pretty good week to have Austin Reed and Malachi Corley. It is worth mentioning that strategy definitely backfired through the first 4 weeks of the season, but hopefully we'll finish strong.
Malachi Corley, Chris, I mentioned this on Twitter. I think that we have to do a better job of identifying CFF players or players that we've kind of identified as CFF only or CFF to that side of the spectrum who might actually get draft capital. Sky Moore was one. Torrey Horton is one. But now, I mean, Jordan Reed from ESPN was talking about Malachi Corley this week in the fact that he has great run out. He's just a physical wide receiver and is a tough tackle. Do you see Malachi Corley as being a guy that not only is he scoring 60 some odd points for you on the college side, but he's going to be someone who's going to command draft capital for you and be on the NFL side of your Campus2Canton leagues?
Yeah, I feel like in the summer we kind of got there on Malachi Corley after a really productive 2022 season. But that Western Kentucky offense is pretty tough to navigate, right? We liked Michael Matheson. Who was there? Not Michael Matheson. Penn State kid. Mitchell Tinsley. Mitchell Tinsley, who transferred out of their Penn State, didn't really do a whole lot. We liked Jared Stearns, who had like 1,900 yards. But I think out of that grouping, I think Corley is the best situated to be an NFL player. And I think we started to identify that. But when systems are so productive and they're giving you so much volume, it's pretty tough. I feel like Romeo Doubs, Nevada, very similar situation, who's excelling for the Packers right now.
That's a good one. And that was one of Alfred's boys. Romeo Doubs, one of Alfred's boys.
It was. So it's hard to navigate situations when the situation is so fantasy friendly is the only thing about that Western Kentucky offense, especially.
One thing I'd chime in and just say is, and Dubs looks like he's worked out a little bit, but one thing I really look for, especially at the G5 level, is not just the receiving production, but are they doing things in other ways? Special teams for me is huge for that next step. Just because you can kind of stick around on a roster, as a returner, things like that, it shows that you have some other skill sets. Corley doesn't seem to have that, but I do like the size. 5'11", 200 pounds is what he's listed at. I thought he was smaller than that.
He looks thicker than that sometimes to me. I mean,
that's nice. That's nice to see. The other thing about Stearns is very, very small. But I did think he had a chance in the NFL because of special teams. But turns out, he was just a long shot. I mean, coming from like Houston Baptist and then Western Kentucky and all that. But I think he's going to get drafted. He's going to be a day 3 guy. So I think that, I mean, that's all you can really hope for.
I could see being a day 2 guy.
I was going to say, I think I
If
could
he
see some
tests
day
really
2
well,
buzz.
Colin, you're not. Colin, everyone is day 2.
Well, yes, but he offers a different skill set than most of the other receivers in this class. Like last year's class, we saw there wasn't really like a big, like traditional X guy. There are more of those in this class, but on the other side of that coin, there aren't quite as many of these like yak type wide receivers. So I think that could bump Corley's stock up a little bit into that day 2. And he's going to be a Senior Bowl guy. Jim Nagy has been talking about he's been talking about Corley for all
So
summer
get ready
as
for
well.
Dynasty Twitter to crown him like their guy when he shows up at the Senior Bowl.
He will be.
He'll
be on radars.
That is one of the hardest things to deal with.
Yes.
In this is the fact that whether it be Anthony Richardson or Michael Penix Jr., we talk about these guys for years on end, and then the dynasty community at the very last minute, some Johnny-come-latelys wants to talk about who their top quarterbacks are.
Yeah.
Listen, come swim with the Sharks, dynasty community. Play in Campus2Canton leagues. So if you actually have some ability to project, then you can use that skill in Campus2Canton leagues. Now, I created the show sheet a long time ago, and I talked about the games that we would do the game review with. All right, listed them there in the show sheet. I did not include Cornell and Harvard on the show sheet, and now it is here in my show sheet. Who the hell messed with my show sheet and put Cornell and Harvard here? Chris Moxley or Nicholas Ian Allen. It's one of you two.
I mean, it was the game that I was watching last night. So I figured I had, I thought Charles DePrima, the Harvard quarterback, looked really good.
You're making up names. You're just making up names here.
I think we talked about Jameson weighing on the show before, too.
You sat down and watched this game? You watched on the field this game?
Yeah. Nick, did you?
Oh, yeah.
No, I didn't. I can't say that I did.
You guys.
Harvard took it to him.
More like DePrimo, am I right? I mean, 6 touchdowns last night.
Yeah,
Wow.
he dominated.
Too bad we can't start Harvard or Cornell players.
Next, Brian
I was actually
Fitzpatrick.
recruited by Cornell. True story. Anyway, all right. Let's bring up the rankings here. Will Chudy, our producer behind the scenes, keeping us pretty and making sure we don't get in trouble. Let's bring up the quarterback rankings here. Caleb Williams, of course, he's been a mainstay at number 1. USC gets Arizona. Jaden Daniels, LSU, gets Missouri today. That's a sneaky good game. I don't even know if it's sneaky. It's just a straight up good game.
100%.
Tyler Van Dyke is back throwing bombs all over the place. Miami gets Georgia Tech. Braden Fowler Nicolosi, Colorado State. Is it not our boy anymore?
He's been benched.
He's been benched. Colorado State gets Utah State. Brady Cook. Speaking of Missouri being and LSU being a sneaky good game, we're starting both of our quarterbacks in there. John Rice Plumlee is a game time decision, so Timmy McClain is here. UCF gets Kansas. Cade Klubnik, Clemson gets Wake Forest. Shedeur Sanders, Colorado gets Arizona State. An Arizona State that's really down on its luck right now. Jackson Dart. Speaking of a player who's really kind of turned around their value, Ole Miss gets Arkansas today. Garrett Schrader, the helicopter quarterback himself, Syracuse gets North Carolina. Chandler Rogers, North Texas gets Navy. And then Dylan Gabriel, the other half of that Red River shootout, Oklahoma gets Texas today here in the Red River shootout. And then a little bit further down here, Chris Moxley, your boy Zion Chris, Louisiana gets Texas State. Maybe he'll be coached by Billy Napier once again later on. Chris Moxley, talk to me about Zion Chris.
Yeah, I mean, he was a guy identified in the preseason as a potential breakout if he got the job. He didn't, but injuries ahead of him got him onto the field. So I'm really excited to see him. I mean, he's a legit track athlete, and you see it. I mean, he's running for 50, 60-yard touchdowns every single week. Played an okay game against the Power 5 Minnesota, but he's a really exciting player. I think if you're checking him out for the first time, I think this is a fun player to at least keep on your radar. Not sure he's an NFL guy. He's kind of small, but really exciting college quarterback.
One guy who is an NFL guy who is not on this list that I'm paying attention to this game today is Cameron Ward. Cameron Ward versus Dante Moore today. That's one of my favorites. Alfred, you're shaking your head. Yes, talk to me.
Yeah, Cam Ward's a guy we were kind of excited about last year. Man, I don't even remember where he come from. Incarnate Word blew up in the FCS and transferred in. Everyone thought, okay, this is like a Bailey Zappi situation. Last year was very clunky. The offense did not look good, but it is humming this year, and Ward looks fantastic. So, Washington State, this is a huge, huge game for everybody involved. The teams at large, UCLA, I believe, is undefeated, but not even ranked. They're favored at home, but Washington State's the one who's undefeated and ranked 13. So, big inflection point game for both of these teams. I think it's going to be awesome, and it's totally a tale of two different styles. The defense and running of UCLA versus the passing. And they have some defense over on Washington State, too.
Chris Moxley, you were a big critic of Cam Ward and his deep passing. He seems to have corrected that this year. And if he has, I mean, this is a player that we knew he had. If there's an elite trait that he can rely his hat on, it's that ability to move in the pocket. He can throw from all of the arm angles, but that offense had been really horizontal, and they knew they had to get it corrected moving deep, throwing the ball vertically. He's been better this year.
He has been better this year. You're right. I still don't think it's all fixed. He still has deep accuracy issues, but they're scheming it up a lot better. The hire of Ben Arbuckle made a huge difference, even though they're running a very similar scheme. It's just he knows how to call plays that speak to quarterback strengths, and Eric Morris, who was there last year, did not. Cam Ward has been awesome this year. I don't really want to take that away from him. I just think the deficiencies in his game, while they've gotten better,
sounds like they're about to take it away from him.
They've gotten better, but they still exist, in my opinion. So. Yeah, really good player, really fun player. Big game coming up against Oregon State. Will be interesting to see how he performs because that Oregon State team's kind of clicking right now.
I think this is actually one of the low-key games of the day. I mean, really, for implications, what it means for a win for either one of these teams. And just for the stats here, Ward is completing 75% of his passes with a yards per attempt of 10. That is elite numbers right there, elite numbers. He's also adding a little more on the ground. Already has 100 yards rushing. So I like him. That's why I was shaking my head, Felix. I think he's a breakout player.
I like him too, but like Michael Penix Jr. last year, I think that Cam Ward, who should have one more year of eligibility, could potentially stay at Washington State this year, prove it 2 years in a row, and then really solidify a jump in draft capital. Because anytime a player has an elite trait, which Cam Ward does, actually I would say he has two, being able to throw from different arm angles and being able to escape pressure. If he can be accurate in the intermediate game and deep game, we're talking about a guy who has a first-round NFL skill set.
My only concern with him staying is where's Washington State going to be playing?
Mountain.
We don't know what
the Pac-2.
We don't know anything that's going on with that Washington State team. So that
they're going to play Oregon State 12 times, and whoever wins, it will be the Pac-12 champion. Let's move on here to the running back position for our projections. And again, you can get these projections as a part of your C2C winning edge tier at Campus2Canton.com. One of the best values in the space. At least in my opinion. We got Ashton Genty, a friend of the program here at number one. He has been playing so well without George Halani there. I don't even know how you put George Halani really back in the offense. Or Ismail Mahdi, I tried to get him at Texas State earlier this week, and I was unsuccessful, but he has taken over the reins there. Jacob Kodabidi, I'm sure I mispronounced
Mahdi?
that. Kodabadi. Kidabadi. Louisiana gets
You're
Texas
just
State.
adding letters.
Whatever. I'm adding letters that aren't there.
He accuses us of making up names.
I'm just reading them poorly. I went to public school, so please leave me extremely, extremely public. Marshawn Lloyd, USC gets Arizona. Will Shipley, Clemson gets Wake Forest. The big boy, Amarian Hampton, North Carolina gets Syracuse. Detroit King, stand up. Penny Boone, same high school as Dante Moore. Toledo gets UMass. Travion Henderson is out. today. So take out Travion Henderson, put in Trip Trainham, put in Mayan Williams, especially both of those guys could be used around the goal line. Quinshon Judkins had his best game of the year last year against LSU. Ole Miss gets Arkansas today. Kamani Vidal, the longtime Troy running back, they get Arkansas State today. Speaking of Arkansas State, that freshman quarterback there playing exceptionally well. RJ Harvey, UCF gets Kansas today. Ray Davis had his best game of his 7 or 8 year career last year.
He peaked.
He definitely peaked. Kentucky gets Georgia today. I don't know that I'm starting Ray Davis against Georgia today. And how about Jonathan Brooks? Jonathan Brooks has really emerged this season, coming in for Bijan Robinson, backing up Roschon Johnson last year. He gets to be the starting running back. Texas gets Oklahoma today. And Logan Diggs, who do I have on this year? Logan Diggs and LaQuint Allen, Frank Gore Jr. there. So those are our running back projections today. Alfred, any particular backs, even if they're not here on our top 14, any backs that you like that you're starting today?
One guy that you didn't mention there, but that you brought to my attention is Fresno State's Gilliam. They do play at Wyoming, not a good matchup, but I did pick him up in a number of leagues over the last few weeks. And, with all the buys, he's a guy I'm having to throw in kind of on volume and usage there. Although playing in Laramie, as you've heard me talk before, is a nightmare. So not expecting a whole lot this week, but he's a guy who's really come on the radar kind of as a bell cow for them. And so
on that note, Malik Sherrod is getting healthier and healthier, though. He was coming into the fall as the expected top guy there. So that concerns me just a little bit. But
he got more carries last week.
Elijah Gilliam has been very good. He does not have a scholarship there at Fresno State. Scholarship Elijah Gilliam. Get him a scholarship. Get him a scholarship now. Nicholas Ian Allen. Are there any run? You mentioned we have a lot of games or teams on bye this week. Are there any backs that you find yourself starting this week where you wouldn't normally?
There were some tough decisions, and one last night that I was ready to jump on and then eventually got cold feet and it worked out. I was going to start Reggie Love in quite a few places and ended up backing off. In one league, I didn't feel great about it. I had to start Richard Reese from Baylor. I know he's been splitting time with Dominic Richardson so far this year. Texas A&M is going up against Alabama this week, but they've had a couple of solid running backs this year in Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels. So I was sort of forced them into the rotation in a week where I probably wouldn't otherwise. But this week is you kind of have to get creative and make the best of a couple of maybe bad situations. And I was going to note on the rankings, there were a couple of guys who were missing that I think in most weeks, maybe I'm looking at those matchups a little bit more, but this week in particular, I'm personally going to try not to overthink it. I'm going to start Rasheen Ali, who wasn't, I don't think, I didn't see him on the list. They're playing NC State this week, but I'm definitely not moving him out of my lineups. And then Braylon Allen, Wisconsin. That Rutgers defense is legitimately good, but again, I'm not going to try to overthink it and think that he's worthy of a spot, even if he's not in the top 10 or 15 of the C2C rankings this week.
And offensive coordinator Phil Longo has been getting him more involved in the passing game. Not very efficient in those receptions, but he has been catching the ball a little bit more frequently than he has in the previous 2 years. Chief asked in the comments, Jaden Daniels, a sell in Devy or a hold? Colin, you're shaking your head there. I think you're right. Yeah, go ahead.
Sell for anything you can get. I think because he's coming off a huge game in prime time last week against Ole Miss. They got that big game against Missouri today. I think he's going to be good in that game, and I think he's going to be productive for the rest of the year. but I don't see a long-term NFL starting quarterback there. He's the type of guy who might get drafted in like the 3rd, 4th round. But we've seen his deficiencies for a couple of years now, and he just has not really improved. So I think he's definitely a sell.
And for all of the new folks joining our channel today, Devy just refers to a college player's ability to really command NFL draft capital or be successful at the NFL level. So that's what we're talking about there. Will, as we bring up the wide receiver rankings, I think, Alfred, I want to send you this question from Main Event in the chat. He asks, would you trade Brandon Ennis for Tyler Brown? Tyler Brown, we have him pretty high in our projections today.
Great.
Create some context for this question.
Alfred,
would you trade Brandon Ennis for Tyler Brown?
I saw that come through the chat, and my first knee-jerk reaction was no. But then, because the context here is Brandon Ennis, 5-star receiver, went to Ohio State. Now, he did not enroll early, so he showed up later after some other people had gotten in some practices and things like that during the spring. However, so there's you could give him a little bit of a pass, but he's tracking on year 1-0. And we know here at C2C, if you do not meet the very, very minimum thresholds for year 1-0, which is like 10 catches, 100 yards, we're not talking about a lot of stuff, but he has not really even gotten on the field at Ohio State. Meanwhile, his classmate, Carnell Tate, has gotten on the field. But if you don't hit year 1-0 thresholds, you have a less than 3% chance of becoming relevant in the NFL. That's just the way it is. That's the way the data bears it out. There's a lot of reasons as to why, but we don't really know. Now, Tyler Brown, freshman, come on, and is basically leading Clemson in receiving as a true freshman. He was lower rated. He was a 3-star guy. Here's the thing. I wouldn't do this trade as written, Brandon Ennis for Tyler Brown straight up, because I think you can get more. I think you can go sell Brandon Ennis, pick up Tyler Brown, get yourself a pick, get yourself another guy you might like who's a G5 guy or something like that. You do not need to do this trade straight up, but I would do Brandon Ennis for Tyler Brown plus, because I think you're playing the odds here. You're saying Tyler Brown's tracking on, he's still at P5, he's still at a major university. Like, he's doing it as a true freshman. His trajectory has completely changed, and Brandon Ennis is going all the way down right now. So I would venture this trade, but I'd get creative in adding some pieces to the Tyler Brown side.
Main Event, I think you're thinking about it the right way and wanting to get rid of a name, because Brandon Ennis, 5-star wide receiver at Ohio State, he's definitely a name here.
And that is the way to think about year 1-0. You filter out the guys who don't make it and you sell them real quick. Be the first one to get off that train while they still have a little value. This is exactly what you should be doing with that concept.
I want to jump in here and defend Brandon Ennis. He's tracking to be a year 1-0 right now, but there's only 3 wide receivers on Ohio State right now that have more than 30 snaps. And they're the 3 that we're expecting. It's Marvin Harrison Jr., Egbuka, and Julian Fleming. They are just not rotating snaps. Brandon Ennis is 5th on the team in wide receivers in terms of snaps. It's very low. It's like 5-6 snaps, but he is in that 5-6 range. So I'm not worried about Brandon Ennis yet. He's getting a little bit of work on special teams too. And then if Ohio State does not make the playoff, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka sit out that bowl game because I think they're going to go to the draft. And then Ennis is going to step up and he's going to be the next guy out there. So I am not panicking on Ennis yet. I'm going to give this another couple of weeks here, and then maybe I would start to move him. Now, Brandon Ennis for Tyler Brown plus, I do like that trade, so I will back that side of it up. But I want to defend Brandon Ennis.
I agree. Getting Tyler Brown plus is probably, especially, if you can get an additional supplemental draft pick or something like that, definitely want to do that. All right, let's move on to the wide receiver rankings here that we have on the screen. Torrey Horton, one of those G5 wide receivers who probably has an NFL future. He's number 1 today. Colorado State gets Utah State. Malik Neighbors has been gangbusters all year. LSU gets Missouri. Brennan Rice, Jerry Rice's son, USC and Arizona face off today. Xavier Weaver, the number 1 wide receiver for Shedeur Sanders. Colorado gets Arizona State. Look at this. Brian Thomas Jr., LSU gets Missouri. the Brian Thomas Jr. that I selected 2 years ago in a mock draft on Devy Debate, and I was mocked and ridiculed for taking him. He reminds me of Preston Williams, the former Dolphins undrafted free agent wide receiver. Brian Thomas Jr. reminds me of him. Luther Burden. I think I had an epiphany this week about Luther Burden, his usage, what it reminds me of, and it reminds me of Percy Harvin. Percy Harvin, who was used a little bit in the running game, jet sweeps and stuff like that, and then, kind of in the slot, can play outside. That's how Luther Burden is being used. He's having a great season. Jordan Watkins, Ole Miss, gets Arkansas. Sean Atkins, South Florida, gets UAB. Terrell Vaughn, I know he laid a stinker last week. We are firing him up again. Utah State gets Colorado State. LeJontay Wester, Florida Atlantic, gets Tulsa. Tyler Brown, look at here, a top 11 wide receiver in projections this week. Clemson gets Wake Forest. Josh Cephas, UTSA gets Temple. Jawan Newton should be DeQuan Finn's number one target as Toledo takes on UMass. And Xavier Restrepo should be the slot man for Tyler Van Dyke as Miami takes on Georgia Tech, and Amari Thomas as Trent Dilfer's UAB. I don't even remember UAB's. Are they the Rams or the Bulls? Blazers. The
Dragons, basically.
The Dragons, yes. They get South Florida today. Nicholas Ian Allen, we haven't heard from you in a bit. Any wide receivers that you like in particular on the day?
Going through how the C2C winning edge projections compare to the C2C rankings on the site, one name that my numbers are a little bit higher on, I think, and it's a tough matchup, but again, it's one of those weeks where I'm personally going to try not to overthink it too much. And Jamari Thrash, he didn't start off huge and then has tailed off a little bit if memory serves the last couple of weeks. But I project him as certainly a top 10 guy this week. And I know one, and I'll probably talk a little more about this in our start and sits, but Washington State wide receivers. Probably Kyle Williams is most likely to benefit from Lincoln Victor being out. But he and Josh Kelly both project pretty high this week. I mean, on a week where there are so many top offenses out, that Washington State offense, even against what's been statistically a very, very good UCLA defense, I'm going to be starting as many Washington State wide receivers probably as I can, especially Williams and Kelly.
Is Kyle Williams the one who started off at UNLV, who had the great
Yes.
freshman season? Yeah,
Yes.
Alfred, you were very high on Kyle Williams. Do you want to talk about him just a little bit? Because he had an excellent freshman season at UNLV.
Yeah, and he's kind of disappeared since. His sophomore season was not nearly as interesting or explosive, although I think he battled some injuries along the way. I was excited when he went to Washington State. This is now, I believe, his fourth year. And he's having a nice year, 19 yards per reception, 16 for 302 and 4, but he's not like dominating necessarily, like we've said.
19 yards per reception is pretty damn good, though.
No, that's great on a efficiency base, but like he's not, he's fourth on the team in receptions, although tied for second in touchdowns. So, having a little resurgence, but I'd like to see a little more, if we're going to project all the way to the NFL. He's kind of a slider guy. But yeah, I'm glad to see him doing something at the the P5 level, and maybe he does get himself some NFL draft stuff by the end of it all. That this whole offense is just having a nice year.
Colin Decker, are you comfortable with starting the freshman Tyler Brown today?
Yeah, I would be comfortable starting Tyler Brown today. I mean, it seems like Antonio Williams is going to be out again, and they've just kind of been feeding whoever the slot wide receiver is in that offense. Now, granted, I think that part of that is because Antonio Williams and Tyler Brown are probably the two best wide receivers on that team. But with Antonio Williams out, Tyler Brown should get a ton of targets again. I think last week he had like 10 or 11 catches, 100 some yards.
Oh, yeah.
He's not going to finding the end zone is going to be tough for him just because of the way he's used, but that volume is just really nice.
Tez Washington, if you're in a bind and you need a starting wide receiver, Taj Washington has been getting big plays, especially with the way Caleb Williams buys a lot of time. If you got 8 seconds to throw the ball, your secondary is going to lose some players, and Taj Washington seems to be the one that always gets lost. So I would fire up Taj Washington today if I am in a bind. The speedy transfer from Memphis, if I remember correctly. All right, Will, let's bring up those tight end rankings here so we can help folks get their lineup set. Go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers here on YouTube, on the Campus2Canton YouTube page before we get to the end of the season. Help us get there. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and help us find more people. Speaking of Jim Nagy, talking about Senior Bowl prospects, Dallin Holker is number 1 on our list today. Colorado State gets there, Utah State, and Jim Nagy has been talking about Dallin Holker, so we will probably see him at the Senior Bowl here shortly. Michael Harrison, the tight end / wide receiver at Colorado, he's number 2. Brock Bowers, of course we would see him here early. Georgia gets Kentucky. Oh, I meant to say this earlier. We were talking about Jamari Thrash. I was at a poker. I'm here in Louisville. Jamari Thrash for the Louisville Cardinals. They take on Notre Dame today. I was in a poker tournament, and everybody in the poker tournament was from Notre Dame coming in to town last night to watch this game, which is a sellout, by the way, the Louisville and Notre Dame game. Bryce Damos, UAB gets South Florida. Tanner McLaughlin, Arizona gets USC. Jalen Conyers, Arizona State gets Colorado. Jatavian Sanders, Texas gets Oklahoma. Mason Fairchild, the Kansas tight end, gets UCF today. Jake Brenningstool, Clemson gets Wake Forest. Jared Wiley, TCU gets Iowa State. And Dominic Mazziotti, San Jose State gets Boise State. Mason Taylor, LSU gets Missouri. And Jack Velling has been playing well for Oregon State. They get California today. And Jaheim Bell, who I think is the Jalen Samuels of college football, can play running back, can play tight end, can play a little bit of everything. He's number 14 there. I'm not, the tight end is what it is. You got to start who you got to start. I would also, hopefully, I would start Corey Dyches, tight end in name, but has wide receiver usage. I actually traded Corey Dyches to Mr. Nicholas Ian Allen earlier this year when I realized I was going to be out on the college side of things in my Campus2Canton leagues. All right, we are way past break here. We're going to go to break here, and when we come back, we'll help you with some starts and sits, and eventually we'll get to prize picks and player props and the game picks. All right, this is the Tailgate on the Better Sports Network.
Campus2Canton on the Better Sports Network.
Talk about how just John Carlson has fallen off the face of the earth here, and like nobody's batting an eye, but yet this is a player who can easily top 60 points when healthy. We understand the Capitals are a bad team, but he is on the power play with Alexander Ovechkin. And considering the injuries with, Nick Backstrom in his hips and Evgeny Kuznetsov and whatever, like he's still good. And I think people forget that just because he was hurt for so long last year. But this is a player who can produce and just feed Ovi the puck in his office and collect about. Again, he's not going to block a whole bunch of shots, and that's fine. And he's probably not going to shoot the puck a ton just because there's so many good shooters on it. You also add Max Pacioretty to that lineup, and you probably take off some shots. But the Capitals are not going to be a very good team. They're going to be playing a lot of catch-up hockey, and he's going to be on the ice. He's going to be there a lot. The only player who could take something away from him is Rasmus Sandin. Yes, Sandin. He's the only player I think who can really maybe dig in a little bit to his ice time or a little bit into his offensive production. But again, that's a slight risk. If I'm getting Carlson outside of that top 10 of defensemen that we just named, I'm happy. I should have never mentioned it. Everybody can just not listen to what I just said. Just forget it, right? Men in Black.
We'll edit this out in post. We'll get rid of this.
Correct, and just leave it as a secret because that's where I would go.
This wasn't a Max Pacioretty injury where he's messed up his knees and all that. Like he got hit in the face.
Yeah.
Right. That was the injury, and he came back and he still scored points. So, I mean, this is a good
Washington's D-core as of right now. Right, Nick Jensen, Trevor Reemsdyke, Martin Ferravari, Joel Edmondson. and Rasmus Sandin. So like there's not many people who are going to be digging into his ice time offensively, right? Correct. They got a lot of guys who are just going to, play defense, protect and whatnot. So Carl's going to be that guy who's just going to be out there a lot when they are trailing because they need a goal or something. And maybe he bumps to 24, 25 minutes a night. Nice sleep well.
Well, if you're not in any of our leagues, make sure you keep an eye on him. If you're in our league, stay away.
No. Keep in mind too that the Capitals have said that they're, as long as Ovechkin is still playing, they are not gonna like go into rebuild mode, which means they're gonna play these guys like Carlson and Ovechkin, and they're playing them into the ground. It's all set up for him to get a ton of playing time anyway. And at least this year, especially because he missed half a season last year, if they're gonna run him out there in an Erik Karlsson San Jose fashion like last year, this is gonna be the year they do it.
I want to remind you that you can call into the show. I believe the call-in link is in the description box, and so we love to hear from the folks who are sitting at home and watching us today. Go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel wherever you are watching. Drew adds in the chat, he says that Michael Wiley for Arizona is out today. Do we see more of Rayshon Luke, Speedy Luke, perhaps today? So, all right, let's get in here to starts and sits. I think we're going to starts and sits. Nick, I'm going to kick it off with you. Give us your start and sit today.
Well, so I mentioned Washington State wide receivers. I have a similar feeling about USF wide receivers. USF playing UAB today. Both, improving, pretty decent, pretty fast-paced offenses, pretty prolific or productive offenses. USF, Sean Atkins has been off to, has been in a good stretch this year. Naeem Simmons is a player that I've got a few shares that I've picked up in recent weeks. I'm going to be playing him in a lot of spots and in some situations, and I mentioned this name, I think, in week 2 or 3. It didn't necessarily work out, but Coffrey Brown had a big week 1 for USF. In some areas where I'm particularly thin at wide receiver this week, I'm going to be forced to start him as well. So those 3 guys I think are in a decent spot for USF this week. And then I have
before you move on here, you mentioned UAB. And I think a lot of people may be having some trouble with whether or not they want to start Jermaine Brown. It seems like that backfield has been split just a little bit more. I actually had a little bit of trouble with that decision in some of my lineups. Do you have a good feel on that backfield and whether or not you have confidence that we should still be putting Jermaine Brown in our lineups?
So this is a situation where, and this has been a struggle for me personally from I have come to the fantasy side of things later in my sort of career. So it's been a struggle sometimes for me to separate, this is good football wise versus this is good fantasy wise. I kind of love the way that UAB utilizes Jermaine Brown from a football perspective. But it hasn't necessarily worked out so far this year from a fantasy standpoint. Last week had an excellent week as far as his usage went. Tied his season high with 13 carries. He has been mostly the number 2 running back this year behind Isaiah Jacobs from a just pure, getting carries out of the backfield standpoint. But they've been utilizing, moving him around the offense quite a bit, getting him some touches in a creative way, throwing the football a lot to him. He's played some in the slot, and last week had a season high 6 receptions. He's had 3 receptions or more in 4 out of 5 games so far this year. So it seems like if what we saw last week from a usage standpoint, 19 total touches, that's trending in the right direction. The production hasn't quite been there yet, but this week against USF, and you're dealing with a short list of options most likely. I think I'm willing to roll the dice on Jermaine Brown more often than not, and think that this is a potential opportunity for a breakout week.
Just for more context for those who aren't paying attention to UAB football and Trent Dilfer down there, Jermaine Brown backed up Vikings running back Dwayne McBride last year. Traditionally, UAB had been a system that gave a lot of volume on the ground to their running backs, but didn't use their running backs in the passing game, whereas Jermaine Brown, as a former wide receiver, he actually has that dual threat skill set and it is versatile as a smaller player. So, not getting the volume, as Nick mentioned, on the ground game, but still being used in the passing game. All right, Nick, I interrupted you on your sit. Go ahead.
Well, I need a little advice from the group because I have a league where I'm very much on the fence. This week is going to be key. We play 2 matchups per week. If I win them both, then I'm going to try to make a run. If I lose them both or maybe go 50-50, might be time to sell. But I've got just an ugly situation at quarterback. I do have Austin Reed, who's already played, obviously, but I'm leaning towards starting Cooper Lega for Utah State, who is probably going to start today. My other options are Noah Fafita, who, like Lega, is probably stepping in for an injured quarterback here. Lane Hatcher, Ball State, who had a good week last week. Sam Jackson against Florida State. Jack Shields against Southern Miss. Jaya Wright, ULM's quarterback, against South Alabama. Or Gavin Wimsatt, Rutgers. So my other good quarterback options are off this week. I'm leaning. Somebody please feel free to talk me out of it.
That's rough. I would probably lean Lega there as well. I mean, I think that Utah State, Colorado State game could potentially get very high scoring. The thing is, Colorado State's going to score. Utah State, I think, is going to have to score as well. So the volume for Lega should hopefully be there.
He played well last week.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Halstead is very, very doubtful from what I can tell.
So I would trot Lega out there too.
All right, there we go. Let's see here. Chris Moxley, can we move to your start and sit today?
Yeah, they're both on the same team, and I think this is how I'm approaching this situation. I am starting Nate McCollum, UNC wide receiver. I like the matchup against Syracuse in general. I think Syracuse has taken a pretty big step back this season versus where they were last year. So I like Nate McCollum. Nate McCollum had, 21 targets 2 weeks ago in his first game healthy. And that leads to my sit, which is Tez Walker. I don't think that you can play him the first week back from NCAA, not suspension, but like ineligibility. I think there's a lot of risk in that. And they're throwing him into your lineup. I know it's a really rough weeks with bye and everything, but I don't know how much he's going to play. Nick talked about this earlier, how it's just, how much practice has he had? I don't know. How long has he been working with the team? I don't know. I do think that he gets involved. I would approach that situation with a lot of caution today.
I have this decision to make, Chris Moxley. Would you go with Texas State wide receiver Ashton Hawkins or Tez Walker in his first action back?
Hawkins, that totals like 67.
There we go. All right. I guess that's what I'm going to do then. So Nick McCollum offers a little bit of that running back build also at the wide receiver position. So I like that one. Colin, give us your start and sit.
So my first start here is Elijah Badger. It's a guy that I've been a big fan of for a while. Wide receiver for Arizona State. He goes up against Colorado this week. So Colorado has had at least 40 pass attempts thrown against them in every single game, except for Nebraska, which you can just throw that game out the window because Jeff Sims could barely get a snap. So there's a lot of passing volume against Colorado, given how much they score. So there's going to be the volume there. And last week for Arizona State, they threw 43 times, 362 yards, and Badger's been a huge part of that. He's got 21 targets over the last 2 weeks. So the volume's going to be there. And if Arizona State's going to move the ball, it's going to be with Badger. And then my sit this week is Jamal Banks, wide receiver for Wake Forest. They get Clemson, and Clemson historically does very well against Wake's slow mesh offense outside of last year. But Sam Hartman's not here to pick that Wake Forest offense up this year. And Jamal Banks, in 2 games against Elon and Old Dominion, he's been very good. In 2 games against Vandy and Georgia Tech, he has put up 11 and 13 fantasy points. This is a very good Clemson pass defense, so I don't trust Jamal Banks this week.
There we go. That starts and sits. When we come back from break, we'll get into the Devy segment. We'll give you some player props that we're playing today. This is the Tailgate on Better Sports Network.
Oh boy, we got a big one. We got a big card here. We got
let's go.
We got a super rookie.
Ooh.
Do you guys want to guess who the big card super rookie is? Because
I'm going to guess
exciting.
somebody from the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't recall who were rookies in those particular years. So I'm going to guess Michael Irvin.
Adam?
Jared kind of convinced me to go Troy Aikman there.
I'm going to read the description. In this player's NFL debut, September 10th, 1989, he produced an electrifying 68-yard punt return for a touchdown.
Sanders.
He became the first athlete in the 20th century to hit a home run, September 5th, 1989, for the Yankees at Seattle, and score a touchdown in the same week.
That needs a sleeve. That one needs a sleeve.
Top
100%.
super rookie, neon, prime time, Deion Sanders.
I wasn't that far off. He played for the Cowboys.
I was going to say Deion, and then when you said the early 90s Cowboys, I'm like, oh, Aikman would be a good guess. So I go with your gut is the lesson there.
And there it is, the white and red Falcon jerseys that you said Deion came in with before they changed to black.
That was because the starting lineup for Deion his rookie year has got the red helmet with the white jersey.
Now look at that do. I mean, are you kidding me with that hair?
I mean, you got to have a headband with those curls. You got to.
That is sick. And this is a favorite card. Do we have any value on this card? We have to, right?
Let me see.
Give me a value here.
Let's see here on eBay. PSA 10 gem mint Deion Sanders, $149.99. And then a 9.5 is $6. So that guy might be a little bit then there's a much more reasonably listed one at $31 for a PSA 10. So it's got some value to it. Yeah, you might want to protect that one.
It's in excellent condition. I guess we have to worry about, is it centered?
Yes, that would be the next thing.
All right, well, we'll go through the process there. Maybe I'll just frame that one as a great moment in this show's history.
It's the Tailgate on Better Sports Network. Go ahead and smash that like button and hit the subscribe. We're getting you set for your starting lineups here today. Hopefully we have some new people joining. Of course, you can call into the show if you aren't scared. You can hit the link in the description box. I believe it is in the description box. If not, Will, go ahead and you can put the link in the chat so people can call in if they want to. All right, yeah. Let's get into some prize picks. Promo code C2C for a deposit match of 100%. Deposit match of up to $100, I believe. So go ahead and use that promo code C2C. Nick, what do you got today for prize picks?
So I had to get a little creative. My prize picks aren't showing up for me, but fortunately Austin sent me some screenshots, so I was able to at least go through some passing numbers. And I've mentioned in previous weeks that my projections tend to they trend a little low, so I usually look at overs, and a few caught my eye. Baron Morton over 226.5 passing yards this week. Texas Tech quarterback Baron Morton. I am also on Jack Plummer over 227.5 passing yards. My projections 251.2, and I know it's a tough matchup against Notre Dame, but Plummer has hit that number every week so far this year. I'm a little less confident, but the projection is more so in Brady Cook over 276.5. That LSU defense has just been just really, really struggled a lot. And then one that definitely caught my eye. Didn't necessarily expect to back Gavin Wimsatt today, but 130 and a half passing yards. I project 165, so definitely some value there. And Wimsatt's gone over 130 and a half, and if not every game, all but one. So, that's kind of an ugly one, but
is that you trying to will that into existence if you have to start him over Laga?
Oh, he's pretty far down the list. I'm not even sure why he's still on that roster, but hopefully he'll come in big with at least 131 passing yards today.
Nick giving a shout out to Gavin Wimsatt. Shout out to Owensboro, Kentucky, if you're watching from Owensboro. All right, let's Chris, give us your prize picks, your suggested prize picks plays on the day.
Yeah, I'm not getting as funky as I like to this week. I didn't see a lot of good value there. There's only one negative rushing prop for a quarterback. It's Graham Mertz, and I'm not sure how much push Vanderbilt can get on this offensive line. So I stayed away from that one. But I am going to go to a ACC team that I think is due for a pretty nice offensive game. Trey Benson over 12.5 fantasy points. Virginia Tech against the run, they stink. 105th in EPA per rush. 2.4 rush yards before contact per PFF. That's 117th in the country. I think this is a really nice spot for a Benson bounce back. He hasn't been really as productive as I think some wanted him to be this year, but I think this is a good spot, especially at that 12.5 number. You can get that touchdown and like 65 yards and you're there, which I think is certainly within the range of outcomes. And when Florida State plays a team that they are heavily favored against, their game plan kind of shifts, and it becomes just like run the ball, don't put the ball in the air, chew the clock, get in, get out. Very, very straightforward, which is why I also like Jordan Travis under 0.5 interceptions. I just don't think they're going to throw the ball that much, and he won't put it in place where there's a risk of it being picked. They won't have to. They're favored by 24 today. So sticking with the Florida State guys. And then Tyler Van Dyke over 2.5 passing touchdowns. This Georgia Tech defense is really pretty poor. They lost to Bowling Green last week as being a 23-point favorite, I think. Bowling Green scoring 38 on you is not exactly great, I would say. So I like Van Dyke. And this passing offense has really turned itself around after the disaster that Josh Gaddis was last year with Shannon Dawson as the offensive coordinator. So Van Dyke over 2.5 passing touchdowns is I expect him to have 3 or 4, to be honest.
I love those plays. I want to mention, as this game is growing, you can also play college player props on Sleeper. Just hit the cash or the cash sign and hit on CFB, and you can play player props on Sleeper. Colin, before I get to your prize picks plays, Alfred, I want to come to you with this question from Reseller Rick, a first-time viewer here in the chat. He asked to pick 2 of these 3 in a non-PPR league. Rocket Sanders, Braylon Allen, and Jonathan Brooks. Can you pick 2 of those 3 in a non-PPR? Rick, by the way, what are you doing playing in a non-PPR league?
Yeah, I've never even heard of a non-PPR CFF league, actually, but Rocket Sanders did not play last week either, right? So are we still on the fence?
He did.
He was back.
He did play?
Not
limited,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I think I'd go, the 2 guys that for a fact are going to get, the most usage to me, Braylon Allen and Jonathan Brooks. I mean, I think Sanders and his health, they're going to give Dubignon some run. Although Alabama's probably shockingly the worst defense because Wisconsin plays a good Rutgers defense. Jonathan Brooks plays a good Oklahoma defense, but I'd go Allen Brooks. Anybody have another thought?
My only thought is that Rick adds in the chat, he says it's a friends and family league. Listen, Rick, friends don't let friends play in non-PPR leagues, okay? All right, so let's get it together. Colin, give me your prize pick plays here for the day.
Yeah, I got a couple that I really like this week. The first one is Trey Harris over 14.5 fantasy points. He has been banged up a little bit this season. In the Alabama game, he played 3 snaps. In the Tulane game, he played 4 snaps. He was back last week. And in the 2 games that he has played that have been full games, he's got 21 targets, He's got 14 catches, both games over 130 yards and a touchdown. So assuming he's full, ready to go, I think that he's going to be a smash spot this week against Arkansas. He's very middle of the pack against a passing defense. The other one that I have that I really like is LaQuint Allen over half of a rushing touchdown. He scored in every single game this year except that Clemson game. That's just a tough defense to go up against. But UNC's defense is not very good. They're 32nd worst in the country in defensive rush EPA per play, and they're 33rd worst in the country in defensive rush success rate. But they have that strong offense, so that Syracuse is going to need to score, and LaQuint Allen is a huge part of that offense. So I think he gets in the end zone in this one. And then the last one I have is Elijah Badger, over 13.5 fantasy points. He was my start of the week, so I think he gets over this number pretty comfortably. In the last 2 games, he has had 27.5 and 19.8 fantasy points. So I like him over that.
All right, let's pull back the curtain a little bit here. Chris Moxley and Nicholas Ian Allen are having a conversation behind the scenes about this Ivy League game line moving. So, Nick, do you guys want to talk to the audience about this? Come on.
Well,
exposed.
We've got we've in the Campus2Canton Discord, very active NIL tier betting channel. Chris Moxley and I have Mox is just the FCS king. I have always had an interest for whatever reason in the Ivy League, so I pay a little more attention there. But we're on a pretty good run here. We were talking earlier this week about Dartmouth and Yale, and I mentioned that our projections are between 3 and 4.5 on Yale at Dartmouth today. I personally haven't been that impressed with Dartmouth. Yale very banged up, but preseason favorite and seemed to get right a little last week. So I like Yale -3 on the road, and I would play it up to 7. Apparently, it opened at 3. Mock said is now up to 5. So I don't know if our NIL betting channel is moving markets. Who's to say? But we have been on a pretty good run, especially with the Ivy League, and then Mox has just been killing FCS all year.
Yeah, Nick is the Ivy League guy. Take it from him. But I'm also on the CL number. If you want to go offshore, you can get 3.5 at a lot of places for what it's worth. But I think up to 7 is fine too. I think Yale's a little bit healthier. I was reading about them on their the Yale forums, which are surprisingly active. But yeah, the Yale football forums seem to think that they're getting a lot of guys back this week.
I'm also real quick before it moves. I'm on Columbia -23.5 against Marist. Just want to.
You love to see it.
Too,
you absolutely love to see it.
I kind of like the under in that game. It's 43.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if it's going to be like 24-0,
yeah,
they might let off the gas. It'll be 17-0, and we'll get hurt. But yeah, I like the under as well.
You did not wake up this morning thinking that you would get Yale and Columbia football talk, but you did. So hit that subscribe button. Colin, I want to throw this question to you from Drew in the chat. He says he's got Berrien Brown, who's injured and is playing Georgia, Zach Branch, and Wiley all questionable. So he needs 2 out of these 3. Ashton Hawkins, Dylan Mockabee from Purdue, or Harrison Whaley.
Yeah, I think Harrison Whaley pretty comfortably in that matchup for me. He's been getting a lot of volume, so I'm pretty confident in Whaley. Out of the other 2, look, you got a wide receiver for Texas State who in a game total that's in the 60s, and you have Mockabee, a running back, going up against Iowa in a game total that is probably going to be pretty low. So when in those situations, I'm going to lean Ashton Hawkins here. I don't feel great about either of those 2, but Texas State's going to score a ton of points. It's just going to be more opportunity for Hawkins.
All right. Alfred, any prize picks plays that you're recommending today?
Yeah, I got some. So I think Nick said Brady Cook over passing yards. I really like over 21.5 fantasy points. I mean, that game could be 70 plus points. I mean, I don't even know what the over under is, but like both defenses are not great. LSU's just a fantasy bonanza. You know, they're exactly what you want. Great offense and horrible defense, at least so far this year. Jaden Daniels is 30-point line. So Brady Cook, I think, can be comparable, and he's at 21.5. So I really like that. I also like Ewers under 295.5 passing yards because I kind of think that game's going to be a little bit of a slugfest. And Ewers has gone under 300 passing yards, I think 3 out of 5 games. Like, he's not this – I mean, he's a good quarterback, but he's not like this otherworldly slinger who's just like putting up 300+ every game. So I kind of think that's going to be a controlled burn of a game. So I like under 295. But I don't have the fancy stats. This is kind of vibes.
All right, we got the questions flowing in here in the chat. Colin, Shedeur Sanders over Cameron Ward today. I
don't hate it.
That's a good one.
I like both of those options, honestly. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Both guys you could start, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the question's Schrader. I think I'm
Schrader.
going. I think
it is Schrader.
I think I'm probably gonna go with Ward in this one. This is another tough one though too. Schrader has been a little bit banged up, but I do think that Syracuse is gonna have to try and score to keep up with UNC. But Ward is just a safer play, I think.
I think I saw SH and then ER at the end, and I just filled in Shedeur mentally, thinking that he was talking about Shedeur as opposed to Garrett Schrader at Syracuse. Let me tell you something. One of the hardest things to do while hosting this show is changing my own damn lineups while hosting the show, getting news about Travion Henderson being out and whoever is out. So mercy for whoever. Cut me some slack for whoever I'm playing against today. Oh, go ahead, Alfred.
I have a question, and I know
this isn't a classroom, Alfred. Alfred's in raising the thing.
All right, I know we passed the start sit. I have a legitimate one I would like to throw out to the group. Actually, get your thoughts because I saw Chandler Rogers. We listed him as a top 12, 15 QB on the graphic earlier. He's on a team, but a guy I was starting in his place who was not listed, Daquan Finn, who gets UMass, and I believe he's healthy and playing. So I've got Rogers, Finn, and Dart can only start 2. I'm throwing it to the group. These are all pretty good options.
If you drafted Daquan Finn, didn't you draft him to be a QB1? And if he's healthy, I feel like you're starting him. So I mean, what are the opinions on that? If you drafted Daquan Finn out of Toledo, I feel like
he was a waiver pickup last year, but it doesn't matter. Your point stands.
But still, with the intent that this is a guy he has a 30-point ceiling. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. 40, 50 points.
Yeah, so
I would go with Finn.
You'd go Finn.
My projections are a little lower because they're still counting the injury a bit. But yeah, he was back and healthy last week, and UMass this week. Good
we like Finn and Dart then out of that trio, right? Finn and Dart. You got to play Dart, right? Against Arkansas.
I have a similar issue there, Alfred. I have Dart, Finn, and then I also have Byron Brown and Jaden Daniels.
Boy, yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time with that one too. So I appreciate you asking this question here.
Jaden Daniels is a tough one not to play. Man, that's tough.
Yeah.
Nobody else is deciding whether or not to play Jaya Wright this week. Come on, guys.
tough scene for Nikki and Alan there.
All right. Every single week we do a Devy session. That is players that we're looking at who we're projecting towards the NFL. It's either Corey or Mike. I'm not sure who it is this week. But Will, when you're ready, we can go ahead and play the Devy segment.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Devy segment. This is the Devy portion of the tailgate. It's the tailgate? Someone give me some White Claw. There are no laws when you are drinking a White Claw, but let me talk to you about one law that is real, and it's the Year 1 0 theory. We are looking at Brandon Inniss coming off a bye week. I am like the president of his fan club here, and I'm holding out for one more week. And I'm just trying to see an increased snap count. And if he doesn't get it, I think it's time to pack it in, guys, and Brandon Inniss. And also guys like Jurion Dickey, Cordell Russell. I think you should get ahead of this, and you should be selling those guys. You should be selling them now. Head on over to NC State. MJ Morris gets to go ahead to take the start over Brendan Armstrong. Maybe Brendan Armstrong can convert the tight end like his boy Phil Jerkovich over at Pitt. But MJ Morris came in last year as a true freshman, played 3 games. Well, he played a little bit more than that. But, he came in week 9, and then he started week 10 and week 11. He was 50 for 82 over that span, 610 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. Look, the play calling was really simple when he was in there. It wasn't anything too complicated, but I thought the kid threw some nice spirals. He looked composed in the pocket. He showed a lot of the fundamentals you'd like to see. And now we got Robert and I in here. He specializes in developing these dual threat QBs. Let's see what magic he can work with MJ Morris. The 2025 QB class is wide open. MJ Morris can make a statement here. It is against Marshall, and I know it's Power 5 versus G5, and I usually care a little bit less, but this is a new phase coming in. And Marshall actually does have a pretty decent secondary as far as G5s go. So stay tuned there on that one. A.D. Mitchell last year, wide receiver for Texas, he came on and finally made the statement game that we wanted him to make the last, 2 years. But 10 out of 13 targets, 141 yards, 1 touchdown against Kansas, who looked like they're in the wrong neighborhood and probably shouldn't belong in the top 25 at all whatsoever. But this is what we want to see from A.D. Mitchell. He is a big man. There are tons of big men in this draft coming up, but he has some very special mobility. We just been wanting to see him put it all together, and this is the week to build onto what he's done at Kansas. Head over to another big man. Tez Walker finally gets waived to go play football. I mean, I don't know why it was that hard. They have guys for 9 years playing for Oregon. Like, can we get some common sense going through here? I guess it's just not too common anymore. But Tez Walker finally gets the go-ahead. Drake May, who is a Heisman contender, finally gets his wide receiver 1 back. I'm looking at all the damage they can do. This is a statement game. I'm all excited about Tez Walker. He is back on the NFL draft radar. Let's see what he can do in his opening weekend for UNC. Now, speaking of big men, we were just talking about Tez, but Rome Odunze, Troy Franklin, right? Oregon plays against Washington. Now, I have a very strong disdain for Pac-12 defenses. They're terrible. I mean, they really are. Just watch any Pac-12 team, honestly. But Oregon is pretty consistent in making some defensive talent out there. They do know what they're doing on defense. Washington makes some good secondaries as well. This game is probably the 2 best defenses in the Pac-12 playing against each other. And we finally get to see a little bit more about Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Troy Franklin. Jalen McMillan might be back. I'm not really tracking on that one, but I'm hoping these guys can do some damage against these defenses so I can see a little bit more, because I just want to know these guys aren't just out-athleting players that are not good as them. I want to see that it's not just offensive scheme. I want to see some more like actual technician play here. I want to see some creation, some separation, not just reading zone and beating zone, which are all good things. I just want to know how good these guys really are, because there's no way that we have 10 guys 6'3" plus going to the draft and they're all round 1 and round 2 draft capital. Let's get some answers here. Let's start sorting out who's actually in what tier. Now, the running back landscape here, it's not great. It's not great for this year's draft class. The top end talent, I'm talking about Trey Henderson, Raheem Sanders, Braylon Allen. Those were the big 3. They've been floundering. And over the last couple of weeks, I've seen a lot of people pushing up middling talent that's been productive, but they still just lack NFL traits. And we should not forget about that either. And I'm not out on Raheem. I think he's been a little banged up. He added some weight, so I'm a little bit nervous about his mobility, like his actual functional mobility. And I think this is a bad Arkansas team. But again, keep your eye out for Raheem Sanders. He's still the player that we saw just go off last year. He just has to make some sort of personal little adjustments there. And Braylon Allen's been fine for Wisconsin too. But one guy that's not getting talked about enough is Devin Neal. He does have NFL traits. He has NFL athleticism. He's dynamic. He's explosive. He had a bad week against Texas. I mean, Kansas just got destroyed in the trenches. They just got destroyed in the trenches, and he just couldn't get enough done. He had 1 big run for 26 yards, and that was probably about it for the rest of the game that he really did. But watch out for Devin Neal. Kansas plays UCF this week. Another good matchup for them. Another good time to make a statement there. And guys, look, that wraps it up for the Devy segment. White Claw, please sponsor me. I'll be great. And as always, guys, go Cats.
All right, we appreciate Mike and his lifeguard mustache for doing that segment for us. So let's go ahead and bring up, let's go ahead and bring up the quarterback rankings here as we get folks ready to set their lineups for a fun and entertaining week 6 of college football. Caleb Williams, the mainstay here at number 1. USC gets Arizona. Jaden Daniels, LSU gets Missouri. Tyler Van Dyke is back. The U is back. Miami gets Georgia Tech. Braden Fowler Nicolosi, Colorado State gets Utah State. Brady Cook has been playing well with Luther Burden. Missouri gets LSU. John Rice Plumlee, a game time decision. I wonder if we can confirm if he's actually out. UCF
he's gonna play.
He's probable, yeah.
Okay, so just sub in John Rice Plumlee here at number 7. UCF gets Kansas. Cade Clemson gets Wake Forest. Shedeur Sanders, Colorado gets Arizona State. Jackson Dart is playing well this season. Ole Miss gets Arkansas. Garrett Schrader, Syracuse gets North Carolina. Chandler Rogers, North Texas gets Navy. Dylan Gabriel, the other half of the Oklahoma Texas Red River shootout there. Nicholas Viado, Middle Tennessee. Middleton, that was earlier this week. Let's see. Gunnar Watson, Troy gets Arkansas. Zion Chris, Louisiana gets Texas State. Let's move over here to the running back position. Will Ashton Jeanty has been playing really well without the upperclassmen. George Halani there at Boise State. Boise State gets San Jose State. Ishmael Mahdi at Texas State. That backfield was a little bit of a committee early on in the season, and now they're relying heavily on Mahdi. Tried to pick him up earlier this year. Jacob, I'm not even going to try to say his last name again. Louisiana gets Texas State. Marshawn Lloyd, USC gets Arizona. Will Shipley, Clemson gets Wake Forest. Omarion Hampton, North Carolina gets Syracuse. Penny Boone, Detroit King, stand up. Toledo gets UMass. Travion Henderson is out, so consider Trip Trainium or Mayan Williams if you have to. If not, pivot to another player. Quinshawn Judkins was hot last week. Let's see if he can stay hot again today against Arkansas. Kamani Vidal, Troy gets Arkansas State. RJ Harvey, UCF gets their starting quarterback back against Kansas today. Ray Davis had his best game of his career last week against Florida. Kentucky gets Georgia today. Jonathan Brooks has been hot. Texas gets Oklahoma today. DJ Giddens, that was yesterday. Logan Diggs, LSU gets Missouri. LaQuint Allen, Syracuse gets North Carolina. Frank Gore Jr. does a little bit of everything. He's a quarterback, running back, whatever you need him to do. Southern Mississippi gets Old Dominion today. Will, if we can go over to the wide receiver position, Torrey Horton at Colorado State gets Utah State. Malik Neighbors, LSU, gets Missouri State. We got 2 LSU wide receivers here in the top 5. Brendan Rice gets USC. Xavier Weaver, Colorado, gets Arizona State. The other LSU wide receiver is the long and lanky Brian Thomas Jr. against Missouri today. Luther Burden Jr. making a lot of plays from that slot, whether it be jet sweeps or go routes or corner routes, or just, quite frankly, just throw him the ball and he runs well after the catch. Missouri gets LSU today. Jordan Watkins, Ole Miss against Arkansas. Sean Atkins, South Florida against UAB. Terrell Vaughn laid an egg last week, but let's see if he can rebound against Colorado State today. LeJontay Wester, Florida Atlantic gets Tulsa. Tyler Brown, true freshman, leading Clemson in receiving today. No Antonio Williams, so we're firing up Tyler Brown against Wake Forest today. Josh Cephas, UTSA against Temple. Jawan Newton should be the number 1 wide receiver for DeQuan Finn against UMass today. Xavier Restrepo is playing in the slot and playing well for Miami. Miami gets Georgia Tech today. Amari Thomas, UAB, gets South Florida. Let's go to the tight end position here before we just talk about this. Let's go to the tight end position. Dallin Holker has been getting a lot of hype from Jim Nagy. We should see him at the Senior Bowl. He's our number 1 tight end today. Michael Harrison, Colorado gets Arizona State. Brock Bowers, Georgia against Kentucky. Cade Stover, Ohio State against Maryland. Bryce Damos, UAB gets South Florida. Tanner McLaughlin, Arizona gets USC. Jalen Conyers, Arizona State gets Colorado. Jatavian Sanders, the Red River Shootout, Texas against Oklahoma today. Mason Fairchild, Kansas against UCF. Jake Brenningstool, Clemson gets Wake Forest. Jared Wiley, TCU against Iowa State today. Dominic Mazziotti, San Jose State gets Boise State today. And Mason Taylor, the Hall of Famer, Jason Taylor's son, gets LSU against Missouri today. Jack Velling is DJ Uiagalelei is healthy, right, guys? We saw him exit the game for a minute last week, and Aiden Childs played, but DJU should be back. So Jack Velling gets Clemson. Chris Moxley, any plays at all today that you are gravitating toward at any position, not just tight end?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to target these high total games for players, right? So Texas State, Louisiana, Lafayette, 66.5. Talked about that one a little bit earlier. I think you can get a lot of value there. I don't really know what to expect out of Old Dominion. They've been such a hot and cold team week to week, but again, I think that offense might do a little bit of damage against Southern Miss, despite Southern Miss being favored. And I don't know if we've talked about him being out, but I don't expect Jaden Delora to play for Arizona. We talked about this last week too. He's a multi-week injury, and they're just pretending like he is a game time decision every game, and he's not. So I actually like no Fafita there if you're in a bind a little bit.
All right, when we come back, get your betting apps ready. Betting finally legal here in Kentucky. We're going to help you get ready to get those tickets. That's when we come back. This is the Tailgate on Better Sports Network.
I like to eat my feelings. So when I'm like super sad, single serving pint sizes of Ben and Jerry's, I just start shoveling that in, and it makes me feel bigger and better. But so let's eat our feelings here. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk football players, food. We're gonna pair them up. Who is represented by what food? All right. I want to just shout out Hal Alexander in there for CMC. Christian McCaffrey is Rocky Road ice cream. A little bit of everything.
Yeah,
does it?
Good Hal.
I like it, man. You know it. I love me some Rocky Road ice cream. Bijan Robinson prime rib. You know what? Bijan Robinson prime rib with a baked potato and some cream spinach on the side. That's what I'm talking about. That is the King's dinner. And Bijan Robinson, I don't care if the dude from The Athletic says only 301, touches. You know what? In honor of Card Sharks, I'm going to say, guys, that I think that number is going to be a little bit higher there for Bijan Robinson. So get your knife, get your fork, you got your steak, you got your Bijan.
Yeah, that's what's up. You're on death row, and they say you get one last meal, and you just say Bijan Robinson.
Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I'm totally down with that. Love it.
I got to jump in on one real quick because Mr. Scamper said Kareem Hunt is candy corn, and I actually had a player, Tyler Boyd, was going to be candy corn for me, and basically it's that nobody likes it, but it's always there. It's always there, and somebody always puts their hand in and grabs some and has some, and they're like, well, and afterwards they're like, why did I eat that? That's Tyler Boyd. He always gets drafted, and he's just kind of there, and nobody knows why. Nobody knows why they take him. Nobody knows where it comes from. Where does the candy corn even come from? Like, it's just there. It's just there.
This is the Tailgate on the Better Sports Network. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're getting you ready for Saturday in a way that no one else really can. And no one else really can. Chris Moxley and Nicholas Ian Allen going to get us ready to put some tickets together. 6-2 here last week, 19-15 on the year. Nicholas Ian Allen, tell us where to place our money.
Well, so I might be getting a little greedy because we already talked about Yale. We talked about Columbia. Just saw a line posted, Lafayette +5 at Princeton. My numbers actually have Lafayette favored to win that one outright. So we'll add that to the list. But something that worked well for my projections last week have worked well this season we have 3 different projection models at CFP Winning Edge and the C2C Winning Edge tier. We release all of those projections in the Discord each week. And when those 3 projection models all line up on a favorite, it's relatively rare, but that has shown some value for us this year. It was part of a strong performance last week. So there are a handful of games where that's the case again this week. We are on UCLA to cover 3 against Washington State in all 3 models. We are on Iowa -1.5 this week. Troy -15.5. I don't feel personally as confident in that because we did get a Jalen Raynor mention earlier in the show that Arkansas State team is different now with Raynor at quarterback, but the projection model is still like Troy minus 15.5, South Alabama minus 10.5, another Sun Belt favorite, double-digit favorite. All three models line up on that one against ULM, correct? TCU minus 6.5 and USC minus 21.5 against Arizona, which, as we've mentioned, Michael Wiley, game time decision, Jaden DeLora, sounding like very, very doubtful in that one.
I can get you a 6 for TCU and a 21 for USC.
I'll take it.
All right, Mox, what do you got this week?
Last week was good to us. 6-2, never nothing to complain about. But I feel like this week has been the sharpest posting, and really, there's just not as much value as usual. So we got to go a little off the board, like Nick did. I'll start with Central Michigan to cover 3 versus Buffalo. I think this Central Michigan team, they've played a really tough schedule thus far. They've played both Notre Dame and Michigan State. And we can laugh at that Michigan State team, but Central Michigan's still like a lower tier MAC team. So outmatched. I really do think that the weather in this game is going to be a little bit of a contributing factor. We're looking at like 15-ish miles per hour, but like 20 plus gusts. And that doesn't really affect Central Michigan, who runs the ball all the time. That more affects Buffalo. And I think Cole Snyder's their quarterback, Cole Snyder, is the best player on the field. So I like Central Michigan here to cover this number. I know it's at 3, so like solid number. But yeah, give me Central Michigan. So this number's moved against me this week, and I still don't really understand why. I think Michigan covers this 18.5 versus Minnesota. I don't know where Minnesota is going to get the offense to cover this number from. Ethan Kaliakmanis is like, we got gaslit by Minnesota's beat reporters into believing that he's some Greek rifle. He's like, I don't even know what I can call him. Like, he's not that guy. He's not that guy. And I don't think this Michigan front has to worry about this rushing game, even though Darius Taylor will be back and I think healthy this week. So I just don't understand why it's moved against me. I took it at 20 and it's now 18.5. So whatever. I like this Columbia Marist. We talked about this game earlier. Nick just gave you Columbia. I like the under here. Columbia's like a top 5 defense in the FCS. Marist is probably a bottom 10 team, 15 team. They're pretty poor. I don't think you're going to get any scoring from Marist. And I think Columbia can keep this game pretty. I don't expect them to score like more than 45 points themselves. So I like that matchup. And I'm going to give you another. I know we're going to talk about this game too, this one's moved against me too, even this morning. And I don't understand it. I like Texas to cover the 4. I just do. I think Texas is the better team than Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma is a Fugazi. Haven't really played anybody tough. I don't think this defense is very good. I think they're better than they were last year. Not as good. I think this Texas defense is legit. I don't think Oklahoma is. I think Oklahoma's going to struggle in this game, to be honest. I think Texas covers this by a touchdown. So,
Nick is showing some emotion here. Nick is shaking his head at your call there, Chris Moxley.
Nick is showing some emotion.
I just really like this Texas team. I think Oklahoma has not proven anything yet.
Nick?
Mox has great points. My numbers are all over Oklahoma.
Don't flatter me. Don't flatter
as
me.
It is. No. It's true. And the way my projections lined up, it was pretty similar at times on Oklahoma last year, where they just got a little too high. Anybody who's followed along with me the last 4 or 5 years, we're often high on Oklahoma. But my projection has Texas favored by less than a point. So we'll see. We'll find out quickly on this one.
The market agrees with you because it's moved from 5.5 this morning down to 4.5 and 4 in some spots. So
we'll talk about it, I guess, on the picks segment. But I do kind of like Oklahoma, and I have a futures ticket on them to win the Natty at like 40-1 or something like that. Because if they get past Texas, I'm not sure I see a loss.
Yeah, I saw
defense is vastly improved.
I saw on ESPN they were showing that whoever wins this game has like a 70% chance to make the playoff.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a big one.
And I just think Dylan Gabriel's a legitimately good quarterback. Their defense has really improved. I mean, I don't know. I still think what Chris said, Oklahoma's Fugazi. I think Texas is a little bit of a. I don't know. They beat Bama, but now we're.
I was gonna say they beat Bama.
We don't think Bama's that good. I mean, they're good, but like they're not Bama.
They beat Kansas. They crushed Kansas. Kansas was undefeated.
Kansas good. Kansas is like the worst defense in the world.
This is
I don't know.
slander.
That's slander.
The U is back, baby.
All right.
Just 2 points here. Just 2 points here before we get to the game picks. One, Nick, Chris Moxley, you are not helping us endear ourselves to the Marist alumni out there, so that's going to hurt. And two,
we have Marist alumni in the chat.
We have Marist alumni are everywhere. Marist alumni are everywhere. The other thing is, I thought about if you all remember from Key and Peele the skit, the Obama translator, the angry Obama translator, Luther. I have wanted to do that segment with Nick, where I play Luther. I think that would be so. Let us know in the chat. Let us know in the chat if you want to see that segment here in the future. All right, let's bring in Barnabas here because we're going to get through the game picks, and Barnabas is going to tell us which player matchups to pay attention to from an NFL draft. Barnabas Lee has shaken Dane Brugler's hand, and there's a code amongst guys who have shaken Dane Brugler's hand. Nobody ever gets that reference when I say it. Does anybody get that reference? What movie that's from? No. I hate you. If you get that reference in the chat and you don't have a subscription to Campus2Canton.com, we'll give you a month for free. So let me know what movie that's from here in the chat. All right, we got Texas and Oklahoma. Texas +4 here, the 12 p.m. game. Colin Decker, who are you taking?
I'm backing Chris Moxley on this one here.
Actually, let me back up here. I should go in order. Let's start with Chris Moxley. Chris, who are you taking? And then we'll go to Colin.
Texas is back. They wipe Oklahoma today. Oklahoma not back. We see Jackson Dart second half. Maybe they get a little bit of a comeback. I don't know. But I'm telling you, this Texas team is going to the playoffs, and it starts today.
Yeah, I'm rolling with Mox here on this one. I'm going Texas with the spread. It's been moving in Texas's favor, which makes me a little nervous, but I just think Texas is the better team.
I mean, we saw this game last year. I mean, it was ugly. Nick, I mean, do you want to where are you at, man?
I try to take my opinion when it's a non-Ivy League game out of the mix. But all three projection models have Texas favored, but all three projection models have Texas favored by fewer than 2.5 points.
Alfred, where are you going with this one?
You know my
Texas
stance. I like Oklahoma. I mean, I'm invested in Oklahoma's future, and so obviously by that, I think they win today and potentially an undefeated season. I like that defense.
Barnabas, you are going to highlight a matchup in this game where one of the players could have played offense or defense. What matchup are you paying attention to?
Yeah,
actually, both of these players could have played on both sides of the ball. I forgot about that. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so we talked about JT Sanders versus Malachi Moore when Texas played Alabama, and Alabama got torn up by JT Sanders. Now we're seeing whether Billy Bowman from Oklahoma can do it. Something of note: there's only a single player in Oklahoma's starting secondary that is 6'1" or above, just one, and so. JT Sanders starts at 6'4", 245, I think is the official listing. So forget whether he can catch the ball or not. Can anyone bring him down? That's the real question. Because out of the Oklahoma's top 10 tacklers, I think 6 of them are defensive backs. So clearly they like to tackle or can tackle, but can they tackle JT? That's the question.
Barnabas, is JT Sanders a top 4 or 5 tight end in this draft class?
I think it's pretty clear consensus that he's 2. I think there's a fair drop after him, just because in terms of production wise, you're only seeing Bowers and Sanders anywhere in terms of athletic, the NFL traits, but also the yards to match it too.
All right, Billy Bowman Jr. could have played wide receiver. I think even we had some people drafted him when he was a freshman.
I liked him a lot. I thought he had awesome tape.
Yeah, there we go. Let's move on here to Maryland. +17 at Ohio State today. Hey, Corey Dyches, tight end designation, wide receiver usage, still starting him. But Chris Moxley, where are you going in this game?
I made it an hour and 44 minutes. That's pretty good. It's come down from about 20. There's actually 16.5 offshore, which I think I would play. But I like Ohio State here. Their defense is substantially improved this year, year 2 under Jim Knowles, which is a fairly complicated system. And they have just dudes, I think, really in the front seven that can make Maryland's offensive line, I think, shake a little bit. So here, I almost Maryland team total under. I'm not really that confident in that offense, and that's really what seals the deal. I think it's a big mismatch.
Maryland is technically undefeated, so this is an undefeated matchup here today. Colin, who you got in this one?
Yeah, so that line has moved this morning. It was, I believe, at 19.5, and now it's at 17, which makes me less confident in Maryland, but I still think Maryland is going to cover this spread here. I think Maryland has a solid offense. Are they going to be able to score with Ohio State? It's going to be tough, but Ohio State's offense hasn't looked as potent as we've been used to either. I think this is going to be a really close one with that spread, but I'm giving Maryland plus 17.
I'm on Maryland. Gave it out officially at 19.5 earlier this week. All three projection models actually, I should say we do have a talent only model where Ohio State was at 19.6, favored by 19.6, but the other two stats only model and our official team strength model, which is, by the way, 6-0 coming into the week or coming into Saturday. So hopefully that good run continues, but that one has Ohio State favored by 15. So a little bit of value potentially still left on Maryland.
Yeah, Ohio State has only scored 40 points in the two games it's played against, 40 points combined in the two games it's played against FBS teams. So, Alfred, who do you like today?
Yeah, I took Maryland last night, 19.5. I think that they're not a great team, but I don't know if Ohio State's a great team, at least on offense. I agree with the dudes from Moxley, but I think 19.5 is something that Maryland can cover, and it may be kind of ugly and it may be kind of low scoring. I'm not sure either offense is going to go off.
Ohio State feels like one of these teams that we're still waiting for them to really hit their stride, and they haven't just yet, at least against FBS teams. So, Barnabas, what matchup are you watching for in this one?
Yeah, so everything I've seen so far has Tarheeb Still, cornerback from Maryland, warming up, I think was last I saw it. So we're going to assume he's in. And him versus Emeka Egbuka, I think, is going to be the one to watch here. Tarheeb Still is probably the only draftable defensive player right now that's coming out in this next class for Maryland. And so we all saw Jacorian Bennett's meteoric rise during the offseason. Last year, got to interview him at the Senior Bowl. Tarheeb Still is bigger and faster than Jacorian Bennett, and Jacorian Bennett was someone that ended up on the freak list last year. So Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get his in this game. There isn't another defensive back on Maryland that can match up with him, but it'll be interesting to see what Emeka does against Tarheeb. So, and I will say, as the Maryland alum here, Maryland, every year, as soon as the calendar flips over from September to October, is when they fall completely flat on their face. And so Maryland's a safe bet in September. You can take all those easy bets. Maryland's offensive line is terrible this year. The defense has looked bad against even teams like Charlotte. And so if I were to pick, I don't bet on games I have rooting interest in, but I'm with Mox on this one because Ohio State's just going to blast the doors off. Although, granted, Maryland has played Ohio State tough. If y'all remember, Tyrell Pigram was a dropped 2-point conversion away from beating Ohio State a few years ago.
All right, there we go. Let's move on to LSU minus 5.5 against Missouri today. Really good game. Chris Moxley, where are you going in that one?
I think this number is short. I think we're overreacting to an LSU loss last week, and Missouri's played a lot better this year. I think this is possibly the best that Missouri's played under Eli Drinkwitz. Brady Cook's kind of getting it together. Luther Burden's top receiver in the country, or at least one of them. Give me LSU, despite how well I think Missouri's been looking.
Chris is frozen.
That's
Chris
funny.
is frozen in a very funny position. I guess we can hear his voice.
Very thoughtful.
He's
thoughtful
frozen
position.
he's frozen in like in a thinking man's position, so it's still good, but it's very.
Can you hear me though?
We can still hear you. It's
You
fine.
can hear you
we can still
perfectly.
hear you. We can hear you perfectly, but it's funny.
All right, well, there you go. That's my deep in thought. It's like a ventriloquist act.
You also kind of look like you're wearing one of those disguises with the glasses and the mustache.
Yes, Chris actually looks like a disguise. He looks like a bank robber's mask or something like that. Okay. All right, Colin. Let's go to you here. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, I like LSU in this one too. I do think we are overreacting a little bit to LSU's loss last week, and Missouri has looked pretty good this year. They did beat Kansas State, but Kansas State just lost to a not very good Oklahoma State team last night. So maybe we're overinflating that win a little bit as well. So I think LSU -5.5. I think they're going to cover that one.
This lines up somewhat similarly to the Texas-Oklahoma game, where my projections disagree with both of you. Very smart people. So my level
you flatter me way too much.
Smart.
My level of confidence isn't super high, but this time last week I talked about how I wasn't super confident in us having Ole Miss favored to beat LSU outright. So maybe I don't know. Maybe we're on to something. But have LSU favored, but by all three projection models, the number is lower than 2.5. So seems to be a little bit of value on Mizzou at home in an early kick this week.
Nicholas Ian Allen is the most polite trash talker I have ever seen in my life. All right. Alfred, who you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm going so many dogs today, but I like Missouri. I think they're actually good. I mean, I've kind of been on Missouri. I had them to cover against Kansas State a few weeks ago. I just think they're kind of good. I think Brady Cook is almost coming out of nowhere to be a very good quarterback, at least college quarterback, and getting the ball to his playmakers. And their defense is all right. I like it over 4. I'd take the points. I mean, I think it's going to be a fairly close game. And, with LSU's defense, even a comeback, if they get down by 3 scores, I still think you could see a comeback backdoor cover. So give me the points.
Jester, you are correct. Ding, 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 winner. I think you're already a member of the site. You're a longtime member of the site.
Yeah.
All right, Barnabas, give us the matchup that we're paying attention to today.
Yeah, so the strong point of Missouri's defense is their corners here with Ennis Rextra and Chris Abrams-Drain. And so we'll see how they handle Neighbors and Thomas. And injury report says Kyron Lacey, I think, is playing, ? You guys can correct me on that as well. Another thing from the injury report is Omar Spates is out, the linebacker transferred in from Oregon State. So can one of Nathaniel Pete or Cody Schrader take that backfield? We'll see. But yeah, we're really focusing on the wide receivers here. Obviously, LSU's offense had to really go off because their defense kind of just, didn't do anything last week. And so we'll see how they do against what is admittedly the strong point of a fairly solid defense, maybe more solid than we thought coming into the year.
Barnabas, I don't have this on the show sheet, but we are going to do UCLA and Washington State. So if there's a matchup, you can very quickly tell us about once we get to that point. I'm giving you this much notice.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Alabama -2.5. We're a very professional organization. I promise we are. Let's go Alabama -2.5 at Texas A&M today. Colin, since the order has been mixed up a little bit, we'll go to you first.
Now that we got Chris no longer in his thinking pose. I like Alabama in this one. I know Jalen Milroe, there's some rumors about like a hamstring issue potentially, but Texas A&M with Max Johnson at quarterback just is not it. That offense is not very good. And they put up some points last week, but a lot of that came on special teams. I think Texas A&M is going to have a really hard time moving the ball. So give me Alabama -2.5.
Kind of similar to the other games that we've been talking about. Texas A&M. I mean, the projections are just have Alabama favored, but by just not very much at all. So think that this is a winnable game for Texas A&M. Not ready to go out on that limb quite yet, but all of my projections have this being within a field goal game, as the line would suggest.
Alfred?
Yeah, I mean the same. I just like Bama to win, and so I would take under a field goal. I've got it at -2.5 or -2.5. That's still the line, right? It hasn't moved over 3. So I would take Bama to win by a field goal or more. That's fine with me. I
2 in some places.
Yeah, and I think what Colin said. I mean, Max Johnson, bad, and I don't like Texas A&M anyway. But the downgraded QB is too much.
Chris Moxley, you're back. Give it to me.
I think Texas A&M wins this game outright.
Mox is so contrarian.
Ooh.
I really don't like what I've seen from this Alabama team. They can't move the ball downfield, at least through the air. And I think the offensive line has struggled a lot this year for Alabama. They struggled last year too. Texas A&M is getting a lot of push up front, which is great. And then I think the weakest part of this Texas A&M defense is the secondary. Alabama can't exploit that. So I just don't. I don't know the path for a Bama victory unless Jalen Milroe hits a lot of his throws today. That's something tough to bet on. So yeah, I like A&M. I take A&M plus 3.5 at open. I still like them now.
All right, Barnabas, give us the matchup or matchups to pay attention to in this one.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the interior defensive line of Alabama versus A&M's interior offensive line. Layden Robinson, the guard for A&M, was thought to come out last year and then went back to school, and everyone was a little bit confused. But Jaheim Otis and Tim Smith are going to have to really clog up that middle to make Max Johnson throw it, right? And so Bryce Foster and Layden Robinson are going to be charged with that. And then can this Alabama run game get going? Jace McClellan hasn't really gotten off the ground yet. And it's kind of rough because, like Mox said, A&M's interior defensive line has a little bit of push in them. And then once you get past them, you have edge Cooper and Damani Richardson, safety Damani Richardson's a hitter, and you have a draftable linebacker and edge Cooper. So I don't think this is the week they get to it, but we'll see.
All right, let's move on here to Kentucky plus 14.5 at Georgia today. This is a Kentucky team that played Georgia very tough last year. So, Colin, what do you like in this one?
Yeah, I'm on Kentucky in this one too. We just saw Georgia struggle to contain Auburn's rushing attack, and I think Kentucky, we just saw them tear up a good Florida rush defense. So, give me Kentucky to cover in this one.
Nick?
Too many points in our projections. Kentucky getting more than 2 touchdowns. Most of the numbers are close to double digits or slightly over, but not quite there. So
there we go. Alfred.
In the interest of time, I'm just taking the points. I don't like Georgia against anybody by more than 2 touchdowns the way they're playing.
Chris?
Contrarian today. I think Georgia covers. And there's a 14 out there if you want to bet on it. I think Georgia at 2 touchdowns is fine. Kentucky's not legit.
Chris Moxley wearing a cape today on this one. Barnabas Lee, what do you got for us to pay attention to here?
Yeah, I have a friend getting married today because she said her Georgia fan friends were able to come to this wedding because they don't have to worry about Kentucky. I disagreed, but we saw Ray Davis pop off last week for Kentucky, but he's going up against 625 pounds of "you ain't moving me," to borrow Jeff Kavanaugh's phrase, in Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson. So if Ray Davis really wants to get on the draft radar, he's going to have to go past that wall.
Let's go very quickly around the horn here. Colin Decker, Notre Dame minus 6.5 here in Louisville, at Louisville today. Who you got?
Yeah, give me Notre Dame. I think they're just a better team by a good amount.
If we don't have time to talk Georgetown Penn, I guess we'll just go. I'm on Louisville today.
Nicholas and Allen on Louisville.
Yeah, give me the Irish. I don't think Louisville's legit, even though they've played okay so far. I think they're going to have a really tough time moving the ball against Notre Dame's defense, like 10 points. I don't know.
Go ahead, Chris Moxley.
Give me Notre Dame. I think Louisville relies on explosive plays, and Notre Dame can limit them.
Barnabas, you got 10 seconds.
Jamari Thrash landed on the Devy radar, but he's going up against probably the biggest corner he's going to face all year in Cam Hart at 6'3", so we'll see.
Very quickly, UCLA UCLA -3.5. That's what I see the line is right now. -3.5. They get Washington State. Colin Decker.
Yeah, hit me with Washington State. I think this freshman quarterback is going to struggle a little bit in this one with Dante Moore.
UCLA to cover in all three models as a favorite. Pretty good spot for us traditionally.
Alfred.
I like UCLA as well. I think it's a trap game, and that line's too fishy to take the points. It's too easy.
Give me UCLA.
Barnabas, say two names to close us out.
Latu edge for UCLA versus Fa'ali Fa'amo, offensive tackle for Washington State. The hardest names possible, but yeah.
Making up names.
We're a very professional organization, everybody. Peace.